Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Ed Fields here along with Sasha Smith. Who the hell is Sasha Smith? Do we know it's Sasha Smith?
No.
You know what it is? It's a combo. Yeah. It's a combo. I'm sorry. It's a combo between you and Rogan Smith. I'm used to saying Smith. Sorry. Okay, so just to make it, make you comfortable, when Rogan comes back, I'll call her Rogan Lightborn, just to even it up. So anyway, so we're here with Sasha Lightborn, Nee Smith, and because Rogan Smith, remember Rogan was on Monday, she had a bad cold coming on. She had on one of those masks. You know, those the Asian masks.
Am I sitting in a sickly chair?
No, it doesn't last like that. Germs don't survive like that. Oh, gosh. You realize if they did, we'd be doomed. Because everything would be germed. Okay? And Ken does his lights a little spray every now and again anyway. So we wish Rogan a healthy, what do you call it, a quick recovery?
Speedy recovery.
But it's speedy? You can't say quick? It must be speedy at all times?
You know what?
Yes,
there
ma'am.
has to be one show where we can't go, where we just go back.
It was just a question. It's a simple question.
Most people generally say a speedy recovery.
Okay. Well, I'll make sure that going forward, when it comes to recovery, I always say speedy. I won't say
Ed.
hasty or any of that type of thing.
Thanks,
fast. I definitely wouldn't say fast. So, so you know what I like? I like the fact that you enjoy coming to do the show with me.
I do. I sincerely do.
I know. And by the way, you know how I can tell? Because and I left it at home because what happens when I go abroad? Do the young people say that now? When I go abroad.
When I go foreign.
Yeah. When I go abroad, I always take my pink bag and keep it in home, and then I forget for like several weeks to put it back in my car. I know that you care for me because without me even remembering, we had discussed this, and you bought me some lovely headphones, and I really appreciate that.
I did.
Yeah.
I did.
I don't have them now, unfortunately, because I left them at home. But
how have they been working out for you?
They were wonderful, especially for all that stuff was peeling on my head. That didn't work out as well. So now I think I'm going to have to get a pair for Rogan Smith. So I don't know if you're in the business of doing that. I know that's a little gravelicious, but I'll get them myself.
Thanks, Ed.
I'll do that.
Take one for the
How
team.
have you been? I have not. I was off for a while, and you and Rogan Lightborn took the show over for several weeks. Did you miss me?
It was like a week and a day.
Okay, well, several shows.
Several shows.
Okay.
It was actually really good.
Yeah.
We had Loretta, I think. We had some creatives. We had Dyson. And
oh, we had Dyson before. This was a repeat of Dyson?
Did I miss you?
Not really.
Not really.
You don't miss me on a regular basis, so.
I enjoy seeing you, though, Ed.
You do?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's very nice.
You're like an uncle.
Well, I am an uncle. That's the thing. But I'm not those official type uncles. I hate that thing. You would never call me uncle. You know the thing, Ken. You grow up around people. The people who are older than you, and then they call you uncle, and you're not their uncle.
I have a lot of my father's friends and my mother's friends
who I
call auntie so-and-so and uncle so-and-so.
I'm not comfortable with that. Go ahead, Ken.
You sound like Oprah and Gail, man. There was a thing they had this week
where they said, don't call them auntie.
No.
Yeah, they don't want strangers to call them auntie.
No. Well, here's the deal. All of my nephews, first of all, I don't want to be called uncle anyway. It's a weird name. Okay? It's a weird
but
thing.
If you stay uncle, they could call you Uncle Ed.
No. What I tell them to do, for all of my nephews and nieces, real people.
What call you?
Ed. And I told them, and they've been calling me Ed since I was like 3. I told them right off the top, and let me tell you why. I said, look, you're going to get to a point in life, because I want to be friends with these people. I don't want to have an uncle-nephew relationship with these people. I said to them, look, you're going to get to a point in life where it's going to feel odd. You're going to be like a, 50-year-old person. And it's going to seem odd. It seems odd to me. So I will now indoctrinate you at this age to call me Ed. Which they do.
Uncle Ed.
Yeah, well, then I'll just not, let's not pay attention to you. So they call me Ed. They call everyone else Aunt this and Aunt that, but they call me Ed. And guess what? I probably have the best relationship with them than all of the other people because we hip like that. We in. Yeah.
Oh, my God,
Yeah,
Ed.
they tell me all the stuff face.
Uncle Ed. Uncle Ed.
And you know why I don't like it? Another thing.
Under a certain tradition.
Yeah, well, I'm cutting it. And you're not my. I'm
going to call you Mr. I'm not going to call you by your first name.
You're not calling
I'm
me
going
Ed?
to call you Mr. Fields.
You're not calling me Ed? You're going to call me Mr. Fields on the show? Leave now. If you're going to call me Mr. Fields on the show, you must leave now.
Or I'm going to call you Uncle Ed.
No, well, then you have to leave now.
Well, I can leave. You done pay me, so.
No, well, I can reverse that. Trust me on that. Trust me on that, because you know that take 3 days.
Ed, you petty, you know.
No, I'm not petty. I'm trying to establish a rapport, and I don't want to be sitting here.
Already.
Right, and you called me Ed up until this moment, and now you're going to call me Uncle Ed. It sounds weird.
Why can I call you Uncle Ed?
Because I don't want to. First of all, I don't wish.
You remind me of an uncle, and so I want to call you Uncle Ed.
Well, I don't wish to be your uncle. How about that?
So okay? I must just call you Ed.
That's correct. Or you can call me Edward if you wish.
No, I ain't calling you Edward.
Rogan calls me Edward.
Oh, well, good for Rogan.
Yeah. Well, all my close family and friends know. You know, Irvin, all of them know me. That's how they know me. I spoke to Uncle Irvin yesterday.
That's my Uncle Irvin.
That's your Uncle Irvin. That's a real uncle. So let's just get off of the uncle niece. I don't go around calling people, hey, niece.
So all
Sasha.
your nieces and nephews, they just be like, Ed, let's push out.
Let's push out.
You don't even know what that means.
Whatever it is, they just really do. Let's roll out. Let's go. Of course I know let's push out mean. It makes sense.
Ed, why don't we go to dinner? Just me and you.
That's fine. Not a problem. Would it be taped?
No. You should just take me to dinner. Since you don't want me to call you Uncle Ed, you should just take so we can develop this relationship.
Yeah, one good thing about not calling me uncle, I'm not compelled to pay. You know, you call someone uncle, you know, there's an expectation there. You know what I'm saying? You go and say, well, my uncle is taking me to dinner. Oh, yeah, he paying. Mm-hmm.
Y'all, Ed is going to take me to dinner, and he's paying.
But if we go as colleagues, you know, perhaps we'll go Dutch. You know what that means? Do the young people know what that means, Dutch?
The young people don't know what Dutch is. I know what Dutch is.
The young people probably their whole life is Dutch. Because I see these brothers around here. You know, it's the most disturbing thing. The women are all nicely appointed, and the brothers look like vagabonds.
I've not heard that word in a while.
Well, there you have it. When you
like my grandma used to say, like, come on, let me fix you.
I just find it, but the girls don't seem to care. You know, listen, when I'm going into the whole adult thing
Can
now.
we not generalize?
Yes, we can. When I was growing up.
Can we not generalize?
We can generalize. When I was growing up, if I showed up to a prom or a function, you know, just a thing, right, where the girl was dressed up and I came in not equally, you know, she'd tell me, you know what she'd say to me? What are the words you think she would say to me, Miss Sasha Lightborn?
I don't know. And don't call me Miss.
Okay.
Just call me Sasha.
She would say, oh, you don't like titles. Okay, great. So she would say to me, you see how the irony of that? So she would say to me, well, where do you think you're going? You see, where you think you're going. So, you know, but that is not the case now. They accept it. They don't mind. Isn't that? Don't you find that to be the case? It's acceptable to have mismatched dress codes?
Well, they say opposites attract.
I don't think it's opposites. I just think it's slack people. Speaking of which, no, this is not a good segue, so I'll skip that. I see with great excitement the PM announced the other day that Arawak Key is going to get a refurbishment, and he did note that Clifford Park also will get. I'm involved with that with the DNP. I'm very excited about that whole area becoming kind of like our Central Park. We you know, I pass there every single day, and it just marvels. We can't even get a curb right. You ever notice that? Just a simple thing like a curb. Doesn't bother you?
Not really.
Okay. Do you know? Let me ask you a question. From Chippingham to the Hilton. Mm-hmm. Okay. Do you see how that could potentially be a nice, beautiful park?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you don't see the disarray.
I mean, but you have is he planning on moving the port?
No, what port?
On the opposite side, or we're just talking about that side?
No, the port will stay because that's a separate island. We're talking about that area where, you know, that whole area where the cookouts are and all that kind of stuff, and then the Clifford Park, Haynes Oval, all that.
Yeah, I could see that being a whole park.
You don't see the disarray.
There are some parts of it that require some.
Tell me what parts don't.
Aesthetic improvement.
Which parts don't?
Like the lawn area is really nice with the actual fort, the physical structure of the fort sits on. I think it appears to, and I don't get to pass it every day I used to, but it seems as if the lawn is kept at a, like it's not a bunch of bush. And now I'm talking about the part that the physical structure of the fort sits on.
Yeah,
and then the cricket club, they keep that area pretty decent.
No. See, this is what's astounding to me. And I don't, I'm not condemning you at all for this. I'm amazed, Ken, right? How so many people in this town are able to pass something that is essentially in disarray. And this goes from the leadership all the way, and I'm going to assume that the PM must be seeing something because he's putting some effort into it, and that it's acceptable to us. First of all, every Monday, it's just garbage. Because they don't have, what they don't do is during the events on Friday and Saturday, they don't have people at the events picking up garbage. So what they have, I think it's because of the shift system or whatever. Everyone goes, they do their partying, the garbage cans get filled up, they deal with that on Monday.
No, so, just nasty.
Well, yeah, but
if I have an event out there, I'm going to make sure that I bring at least large garbage bags or a large garbage tin or several garbage tins to make sure that my area is at least clean. Is that the responsibility of the government?
Let me tell you why it is this responsibility. First of all,
the beaches after a holiday.
No, this is how it should be run. Because unfortunately, this is what you have to deal with, no matter where you go in the world. First of all, you have to have enough garbage cans. Okay? Not everyone is going to bring a bag to the beach and carry their garbage. Fine. Okay. You have to have enough garbage cans. Secondly, you have to have people changing out the liners when the garbage gets full. Because what people will do is just put garbage next to the garbage can. That's what they do. They're trying to say, okay, I'm trying to put things in the garbage, but the garbage can is full. Okay? Yes. Then you need people, like I see at every public park on the planet, walking around picking up garbage as it goes. We do it on Paradise Island. You do it so that you don't have a big buildup.
I respectfully disagree.
Okay.
Beans are nasty.
Fine.
If I'm having a stakeout, if I'm having whatever it is that I'm having, when I have a stakeout, for example, because a lot of those go on that side of, Arawaki. If I'm having a stakeout, I'm going to plan that I need so many steaks because I sold so many tickets, which means I need so many bread, which means I need so many forks and knives, salt and pepper, all of that stuff. The same way that I'm planning that event, I'm going to make sure that I have at least, let's say I have a 10 by 10 tent or 20 by 20 tent, I'm going to make sure that there are at least 4 garbage tins with garbage bags in them for the event. After my event, I'm going to make sure that the space that I utilize, that the government gave me permission to utilize, is properly cleaned before I leave.
Well, that's good.
And that's just me personally.
And that's very commendable.
I think the point is that we are nasty people.
Listen, I don't think you want to even begin to commence to question my feeling about the level of nastiness, because I've been doing this for 25-something years. Now, that's wonderful, and as long as you can now control when that person walks around with your steak, eating it, by the time they get to the next end of the thing, they don't drop it there. Well, that's good, because you could clean up the whole park. But the point I'm making is this. First of all, what should happen is this. If you want to do something to raise money for whatever cause, whatever, maybe you just want to make some money for yourself, I don't know. First of all, if you're going to use that space, there should be a fee. Okay? That's number one.
There's no fee?
I think there's a nominal fee. Okay?
Oh.
But the fee should be enough, not prohibitive, but enough so that you have a collective amount, because it's all relative, right? If you only have, I'm under the impression, I could be wrong, I don't know what the people at Arawaki pay, if they even pay rent. I don't know. They may, I don't know.
The vendors themselves?
The vendor, yeah.
They
pay
a fee.
Because, the straw market people, they have a fee of I think it's $30 a week. They don't want to pay that. Potters Key people, same thing. They don't pay. They have to collect. They have tons of receivables. Okay? So, because our thing, if you read Rogan Smith's column last week, we don't like to pay. That's the run that's the push out or whatever you want. That's the run we on. We ain't into paying. and then we complain.
Push out wouldn't be acceptable.
Yeah, no, it wouldn't be acceptable. You're right. That's the pushback. We don't wish I spoke to Rogan when she wrote the column because she forwarded it to me to read, and I said, the only thing that's missing is to say, and yet we expect the service. So we don't want to pay BPL bill. We don't want to pay the straw market bill or the Potter's Key bill or the nothing. We want to pay nothing, but yet we expect top standard service. Okay, so my thing is you go to a park, you pay a fee, you're gonna have a cookout, and if it's only one person on that thing, well, the fee should be enough to cover that little garbage that you create between that and the other people. And if you have more people and they all pay a fee, then you have people on site with the little stick walking around, because you know why? Garbage blows. It's all across the street and stuff. So we're going to take a break. We got the news. Oh, not yet. Our guest this afternoon, you see how time doesn't fly when you're with Sasha? Because we're having such fun. Well, our guest this afternoon is going to be Jeff Lloyd, who is the Minister of Education. Proper timing, because it's all these graduations and stuff. I can tell you something off the air. You can tell me if I should say it on the air. We'll be right back. 2. Ken, what year did you graduate? 86. Okay, that's more like it.
Whoa, I was only 1.
Yeah,
Ken.
Yeah. I graduated in 75. You were minus 10. So anyway, this is
ancient.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. You know what's good about being ancient? I don't have to deal with all the BS that you will have to deal with in your modernness. We have, as you know, our guest is going to be Jeff Lloyd, who is the Minister of Education. And it's very timely because all across the country, people are graduating. People, not kids, people. They're people. And so, Sasha Lightbourne, your parents were very, very successful people in their spheres, and they did well. Do you think you are of the generation, or you're just missing the generation, where not because of you, because it has nothing to do with you, but because of the environment, because of the competition, the whatever you want to call it, economics, that you will be as successful as them without well, let me rephrase. When I came out of college, it was almost automatic you could get a decent job with a degree, right? You just come back, get a job. People looking for people with degrees, and is it that easy? Is it that? Tell me the environment.
It's not that easy.
Yeah.
Not anymore. Even the who scenario isn't even working.
No,
for a lot of people.
Because everyone knows everyone.
Because everyone knows everyone. And it's
too much
sad.
Demand.
And even, too, in many cases, you'll find people coming back home qualified, and they're told that they're overqualified. And I hope to be in a position where I'm more successul than my parents.
Well, we all do, but the reality is it's so much difficult.
Will I get that?
When what did you do you went? Did you attend college?
Mm-hmm. I studied law.
Okay.
I went to school in England.
And you studied law?
I lived in England for 4 years.
Did you pass the bar and all that stuff?
I didn't do the bar.
Okay.
I got my law. I have a law degree.
Okay.
Came back
so
home.
you had intended to go into the law?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what stopped you from going into the law?
When I had finished school, I was when I had finished my LLB, the school that I went to, Fred Mitchell also attended that university. Yeah. Yes. So essentially, what it is.
Any particular reason why the reference? Just out of interest?
No, I just felt like saying that.
No problem. Just checking.
So at the University of Buckingham in England, the LLB is normally, as it still is today, a 4-year or 3-year program. At the University of Buckingham, you can do it in 2 years.
Right.
So I had gone straight from high school straight to UB, well, then COB.
Like a speedy course.
And then straight into the University of Buckingham. Upon finishing, I was exhausted. I just kept going, and I felt like I would not have been able to go any longer. So I told my parents, I was like, I'm coming home.
But you had finished your degree.
I had finished my degree
successfully. So you were supposed to then go into what?
To bar school.
Okay.
And that
like
would have
been or something like that.
Right. That would have been another 2 years. Right. I came home. And, of course, my parents being, if you know my parents, you know I wasn't going to be home for free.
Yeah.
So they was like, okay, you want to take a break? Take a break, but find a job.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. I ended up in news, and then the rest is history, as they say. So.
Do you think you'll ever pursue the law?
I mean, you just never know.
Yeah. Well, at least you have the basic. I mean, you could always just go to the Peach, what do you call it? The Peach School and do that, right? I could do that.
Let me tell you how interesting life is. While I ended up in news, I found myself covering a lot of court. So it still worked out. I covered a lot of court cases, big court cases too, like those that would grab headlines. So I still ended up using the degree. I obviously went off back to UB and got my media journalism degree as well, just to make sure that I was kind of not just covered there.
What's interesting is it seems like there's a parallel. I did political science and I was going to go into law. I just couldn't afford it. But then I ended up in journalism and covering the courts, and then realized I didn't want to be in that because that was not Perry Mason. Do you know Perry Mason?
I know you're talking.
That was not Perry Mason, Jack.
Right.
This was creepy crawler. So I thought I would have made a decent lawyer. I'm argumentative.
Yeah.
But having said that, the reason I asked you that, and thank you for the synopsis, was because I get the feeling that a lot of people come out of school now and they end up in something completely different from what they want because of the lack of opportunities in the field. There's so many fields out there, but the Bahamas are so narrow. And we're so narrow because, and this is the interesting rub, we have not allowed, we have... Oh, God. I'm going to
Our economy is not diverse.
You know why? But this is the exact point I'm making, because we have been so close-minded.
We have been.
Okay? We have allowed the politicians and the politics to be super-duper, to pander to protectionism for those of us, and I'm going to put who feel threatened because of, it's happening now with like WTO argument, right? The reality is, if you are qualified or if you decide you wish to be qualified, the sky could be the limit. But if you decide that your only qualification should be a Bahamian passport, then you're going to be challenged. Because you're asking for someone to protect your economic well-being based on your citizenship versus your qualification. Do you find that to be the case? I find it to be the case all the time.
Yeah, I think that's an accurate way to put it. I definitely think there's an accurate way to put it. I also think that, we always use this term, but we are suffering from it more than we probably wish to allow ourselves to believe, which is brain drain.
Well, yeah, because there's no opportunity.
They're just not coming home.
They're not coming home because, you see, you have to come home to something. I can guarantee that except for the few, most people's first choice would be to come home if there was something here for them. So I had no issue coming home at all because I knew that there was opportunities, right?
I knew I was coming home.
Well, I mean,
without a shadow of a doubt.
But I knew that. But I mean, you were practicing law, so you're coming home because you weren't going to be practicing law in Bermuda. So the reality is, but because we have been, so let me give you an example. I want to see if this makes sense to you when I talk about this. Now, I don't know the full accuracy of this, so think of this as a fictional, reenactment or depiction of a scenario, right? Suppose you have a Italian motorcycle company that for whatever reason they believe that the Italian environment is no longer conducive to their business, tax-wise, whatever, right? So they come to a place like Freeport, Grand Bahama, and they say, you know what? We believe we can set up a wonderful design and engineering facility here. We may not be able to do manufacturing because of cost, right? But we can set up a design facility here. But what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to bring our 100 motorcycle designers to the Bahamas to work in this design facility. Why? Because there are no Bahamian motorcycle designers.
Right.
Okay? Which means there's no threat to Bahamian employees, right? Now, you bring 100 people. First of all, these are probably well-paying jobs, so they're going to have decent homes. So that's some real estate thing. There's trickle down there. But you know what's even more beneficial? That there's a Bahamian somewhere studying mechanical design, mechanical engineering, or design. Now, that Bahamian actually may have an opportunity to come to the Bahamas and work in his field of study in the Bahamas because we've welcomed this type of activity. Does that make any sense to you?
It does.
So the question is, why aren't we not in that mode? The reason I bring this up is because I understand that a similar thing had happened. I can't give you the exact details. And you know what our first reaction was? No, we can't give all them work payments. That was our first reaction. But what are you displacing? If you have to give, I just throw a number. It could be 50. It could be. If you're bringing in 100 motorcycle designers, right? How many motorcycle designers are you aware of in the Bahamas? None. So when, for instance, at Atlantis, we trained Bahamians to be in the veterinarian or lab business for like dolphins and sea lions and, aquatics, right? When Mr. Mitchell, your reference, went to Singapore, he and I later had a discussion, business discussion on opening up the country because the issue was, if you remember this thing way back, like, why do we have foreign sea lion trainers, right? Well, because we don't have seals, for one. But the question I put to Mr. Mitchell, because he told me he had been to Singapore, I said, did you notice that when you went to Singapore, did you meet the 2 or 3 Bahamians who are working in Singapore who were trained by Atlantis, who are now in Singapore, who are there because they have that skill? He said, yeah, I did meet them. It's an exchange. It's a moving, but instead we choose to be insular. And the more insular we become, Sasha, the more we shrink. And the more we shrink, the less people have an opportunity to come back to be in a field that they love. That they studied. I agree with you. And that could be and this is a wonderful country. There's no reason why we can't have maybe that guy, that one Bahamian who is now working in the motorcycle design shop in Detroit, if he had come here and gotten the knowledge from the company that he worked with, maybe he could end up spilling off his own motorcycle design company and his own motorcycle line. That's how all these other car companies developed. They worked for Ford as engineers, and then some guy, I don't know what his name was, maybe his name was Chrysler. So you know what? I ain't into Ford no more. I'm going to start my own thing. That's what happens when you allow the marketplace to just be open as opposed to closed. We're going to take a break. Our guest this afternoon is Jeff Lloyd, who I think has just arrived. What perfect timing. The minister, and we'll be taking a news break, and then we'll be with our minister, Mr. Lloyd. Thank you. We'll be right back. Please join in. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Ed Fields here along with Sasha Lightbourne. Rogan Smith is not well. I want to say hello to our sponsors, Kelly's Home and House and Home, Roman Meal Bread, Sunshine Insurance, and Arawak Homes Insurance Management. I want to also thank Burger King, Kentucky Fried Chicken, Superwash. They washes you, they dries you. Of course, we can't forget Wendy's, Coca-Cola, and Subway, John Bull Business Center, and all of our wonderful sponsors. Our guest this afternoon is the one, the only, Jeff Lloyd. Of course, he is now, I suppose, the only appropriate term would be, seeing as the season we're in and what he's doing, has graduated from the studio to the cabinet as Minister of Education. It's all very, metaphorical. But Jeff Lloyd, thank you for coming.
Sure. Thank you.
This is your season. You got 2 seasons. You got September, when the schools open up, and you got now when the schools close. I mean, obviously you got year round, but these are the heights, right? How many commencement speeches have you done this year alone?
Only 2 of them, 3
Okay,
actually,
yeah.
but because there are so many across the system, you're just simply not able to go to many of them.
Do you get a request from every school to do it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So but I guess they must realize that you get a request from every school, and I suppose you have to put it on some sort of rotation or something that you do.
Yeah, and the director, the permanent secretary, you have 4 deputy directors, assistant directors. You have a number of, as it was, substitutes. I don't want to use the term like that because it's not really a substitute. But yes, you have a number of senior management personnel who can represent the ministry.
Is that standard procedure, though? I mean, as the commencement speaker, the Minister of Education has to be the commencement speaker.
You can't be. No. That's impossible because they have things.
Most
on
of the schools have had.
But a Ministry of Education official must give remarks. Particularly in the government system.
They give remarks,
Right.
Normally they would say something, But I was at C.V. Bethel, and I think it's Reverend Harrison Thompson. He was.
This is from who used to be at tourism.
No, he's a counselor. He's a counselor.
Oh, at the school?
He's not a reverend. He's a psychologist.
Yeah, psychologist. He was awesome. Okay. Unbelievable. Yeah. He was fantastic.
CV is a primary school?
No,
high school.
High school. It was very impressive.
Yeah.
Very impressive.
I spoke to school. I want to ask you a question because it's very difficult. Do you find it? There's this dichotomy or this dynamic, I should say. I shouldn't say dichotomy between the audience, which essentially are the students, who you want to, you're aiming your remarks at, and the speaker, and to find that link, that connection, right? Because, as I told them when I did my speech, I said, I hate speeches. So you're sitting there thinking, like, how long is this speech going to be? It's like going to a sermon. I mean, do you find it hard to find the right tone, connection with students?
Not me. And the speakers I heard this year, like, for instance, Dr. Sharice Ferguson spoke at the University of the Bahamas graduation. She's a Bahamian who is a neurosurgeon at... I think it's Harvard or something like that.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Very, very practical, very down to earth. And she essentially gave her story and talked about the challenges she had. She's, I'm one of a very few female neurosurgeons in the United States. She's a single mother. Obviously she is black, and how, she had met so many resistance and challenges and people who, of course, exhibited their prejudices and biases towards her. And she came away with 3 or 4 very important life lessons, essentially saying, hey, listen, don't let nobody define you, man. You go out there and make your own statement, but you just can't say it. You got to do it. You got to prove yourself and so on. So, not really. But I like to go back to something you said that, my 2 seasons are graduation, beginning of school. Yeah. Of course, you did admit that it's a year-round thing, but there is also a very important season called the summer, because I'll tell you, this is the only time the only time you have to do your major repairs.
Right.
And perennially, those repairs really, because of the nature of them, require more time than the summer provides. So it's a great push to get school open. Right. And sometimes, some years, But
you told me the last time you were here that you were changing. There was a change in the process whereby schools would be given budgets so that minor repairs that needed to happen, so they wouldn't be nuisance projects during the summer, could happen throughout the year if they put in for that. Did that transpire?
Yes, we're in the process. We have $4 million over 172 schools plus 60 or so satellite buildings to do just that. But the plant is so old and it's long past, in many instances, its usefulness, that it's need of major. For instance, this year we have about 12 schools that we have to do what we call critical repairs. If not, we're really looking at some potentially serious repercussions. I mean, critical repairs, $400,000 or $500,000 each. Those schools, need major improvements to walls or roofs and so on. Major repairs, because some portions of them, the school is not functional because of that, because of the danger of falling.
So how much money you think over the summer you're going to be seeing? Is it the $4 million, or you got more over the next?
Capital budget is $45 plus million, which is maybe 50% of what you need.
Yeah.
But we make it work.
I suppose the most difficult question that I've got to pose to you, Jeff Lloyd, is this. I think the Ministry of Education, other than maybe the Ministry of Health, I don't know, has the largest budget. Is that correct?
$351. Yes.
Right. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to get into the split between administrative and facilities and all that. We don't need to talk about that. Are we getting a return on that investment?
Well, it depends on who you ask. Obviously, if at 46% graduation rate, some would suggest to you, and I certainly would be among those to suggest to you that we are not really. Less than half of your students are meeting the minimum standards. If you look at the grade 3 GLAT exam results, only 60% are meeting the standard that's required in math and English. If you look at the grade 6 GLAT results, which include 4 subjects, again, only 50% are meeting the minimum standards. So you go to grade 12 and you see again, by way of the graduation rates, forget BGCSE and all that, you see only 50%, let's say 50%, 46%, but let's say 50% meeting standard. Now, come on. If you were making any investment, any investment, and the return expected would be 10%, but you're only getting 5% and continues to get 5%, you probably will look for another investment. All right? Let's just be fair about it. Mm-hmm.
Or you're looking for the components that that restrict that investment from giving a bigger return.
And I'll tell you, I think because our society is one where there is not the natural link, natural connection, synthesis between education and success. Okay, I'll give you an example. Today a young person may not even finish high school. Today potentially could get a job, and I don't wish to pick on your establishment, but can walk in and be a dishwasher or go and work at a fast food joint or, so on and so forth. So in other societies where education has seen as a priority and families, do the things that they need to do and make the commitments they need to make and stress the importance of becoming qualified, becoming skilled, certified, and so on, in order for you to quote unquote make it and earn a decent living, that same ethicism doesn't occur here. And so, the young man, young woman feels like, well, what am I busting my tail for? Why do I have to stress out and try to get 5 BGCSEs or so on and so forth? And this is why in our society, the data shows that only 30% of our students leaving high school go on to college. 30%. So 70% enters the workforce. Now, if that 70%, if half are not meeting the standard, you got trouble.
But is the system part of the problem? Because how are they making it to grade 6 when they don't meet?
System is definitely part of the problem. System is definitely social promotion. It's a major part of the problem.
Anytime I'm faced with an issue, a problem, and I'm sure you think the same way as I do, I'm sure Sasha does, you try to figure out what's the trigger, what's the switch you could pull to resolve the issue. It becomes, is that a break? We're going to take a break? Okay, we're going to take a break. We'll come right back. We're going to talk about this whole systemic issue. We'll be right back. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Ed Fields here along with Sasha Lightbourne, who's sitting in for Rogan Smith. Our very distinguished guest this afternoon is the Honorable Jeff Lloyd, who, for other reasons, I'll leave now, say has to some degree of courage to enter into the sphere of politics because it's daunting. That's the only word I will use. But we start to ask the question, Minister, about why is it that we have these parallel systems where in the private sector, and again, I don't want to overgeneralize, I don't want to be accused of that, we seem to be having fairly decent success. I mean, when you look at schools like Queens College, I think they just got that lighthouse designation, the only one in the Caribbean. You have people taking APs in grade 11 versus and BGCSEs in grade APs in grade 12 and BGCSEs in grade 11. What have you discovered that if you had a magic wand and you could switch that around, what have you discovered now that you're in the system?
Well, I think Sasha said it during the interlude. Listen, in those private sector environments, you're going to have a much more committed caregiver. All right, that'll be godmother, father, mother, and so on. Mm-hmm. Right. First of all, you're making a much greater investment. I don't know how much QC is, but for those the schools that I do know of, you're looking at maybe $5,000-$6,000 a year, $1,800 a term, mm-hmm. plus whatever the books are. That's no small piece of change, mm-hmm. right? There's a greater degree of attention paid to the child, a greater degree of interest shown in the advancement, development of the child, and mm-hmm. so forth. And it has been scientifically proven that if there's there are two significant markers to the success of students. Number one, it's the quality of the teacher and teaching. Uh-huh. Number two, it's the involvement of parents. Right. And like you said earlier, matters not where the child comes from, whether they come from the ghetto or wherever, that child can learn, right. given the right environment. All right, we understand that. So naturally so. In the public sector, there's a laissez-faire, if not an indifference, if not an outright disinterest by some parents, if not a lot of parents, in the education of their children. Mm-hmm. I mean, completely.
Parents don't even exist.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And as a result of that, I mean, here it is, you're already competing in a challenged environment. Again, we talk about social promotion. Back in 1972, the government made the decision that whether you can meet the requirements of the next grade, grade 9, grade 10, you're going to move on. So if a student didn't get it in grade 1, they're unlikely going to get in 2, 3, so on and so forth. All right? This is why I'm just showing you in grade 3, the GRAD exam, the grade level assessment test, GRAD exam, 60% or 6 out of 10 are meeting your basic minimum standards. If they're not meeting that they're not going to meet it in grade 5, they're not going to meet it in grade 9, and so on, unless there's some serious intervention. Let me give you another example. We now know that approximately one half of the students that enter grade 1, 5 years of age, are not ready for grade 1. We now know that, okay? This is why the government is making...
And grade 1 is like the first
grade. This is why
into school, and they're not ready for the grade 1.
Not ready. I mean, and what is not ready, okay? They don't know, basically where they live. They don't know their numbers. They don't know their shape. They don't know their colors. And certain basic questions, understanding.
These are the things you would learn when your parents are showing you blocks and stuff like that.
Things of that nature.
ABC.
Right? We also know, and this is a universal initiative, a universal thrust, that students who, in fact, have some years of preschooling, what we call pre-primary now, they're 3-year-old, 4-year-olds, are much more equipped, much better prepared for grade 1 and for life, period, beyond that period of time. So this is why the government is spending considerable resources, making great investment in what we call pre-primary education, early childhood education, not only this country, all around the world. They now understand how important it is for children to get that foundational start. In years and times past, in cultures past, it was the family that did this. We know how the world has changed. Families now are disintegrated. Mom, dad, all are working from the earliest stages of human life, right? So we have that. 2, we are making greater investment in what we call profession development. In other words, teaching in 1990 is not the teaching of 2017, 19, 20, all right? Things have changed. Science now knows much more about brain development and how children learn language, and how that is to be facilitated. Rote learning is passé. All right? This is how you and I grow up. We learn our ABCs. Okay. Yeah. All right? Yeah. Today, that's much different. It's now about concepts, about experiential learning. And you see in progressive societies, whether it's South Korea, Finland, Singapore, they're doing away, as it were, with things called subjects. There's no longer maths and science and English and so on.
They don't even have homework in some of those places.
You got it, okay? Because, again, of the studies. Just recently, there was a study on early childhood education. And it was found that in the United States, for instance, they're not doing as well as countries such as England, Finland, Australia, New Zealand, and so forth. So there's a paradigm shift in education, Ed. Today, employers, they don't have time, your own company don't have time to put the kind of money into training that they used to. They expect when you come on the job, you better be equipped. You better be ready. You better be qualified to do something on day one. They don't mind telling you about your company, telling you how we do things here, but they don't have time to. They have time to teach you maths and English and how to use the computer. No, them days are over. So there's a different in education, and I trust and hope and I pray, and every time I have a chance, I try to invite parents, please get involved. And they are more likely to get involved when the child is 3 years of age. They're very, very interested and excited then than when the child is 13, 15, 17.
You talk about, just for a second, so what you're saying is education, which I think people mix up with academia. Okay, they feel that those words are synonymous when they're not. Education is really the process of learning how to learn.
Absolutely. You got it. Brilliant.
Okay.
Brilliant.
Because
precisely,
you just have to be able to figure things out.
That's right. That's why if you look at any preschool environment, you see them sitting in circles. You don't see them sitting in little desks like tin soldiers looking up at the board. None of that anymore. Today, the teacher chalk and talk. Passe. Today, the teacher is a facilitator. The teacher is the one who enables, is what you might consider an enabler of the learning experience. And you're absolutely right. Teaching them how to figure things out. Looking at the circumstances before you and coming to the solution.
I want to ask you, now this may seem completely off, Sasha and Minister. When you talk, we were talking about how you find the solution, right? What is that trigger? And Sasha talked about, and both you and Sasha talked about, this family void. How much should family planning play a role? Because if you're going to have a situation where you're going to be constantly investing dollar after dollar to overcome these family voids, right? You're going to be spinning tires. Should family planning on a national level be a part of the overall process of education, so that by the time someone does have a child, right, that they are in understanding what it means to have a child, that they're not having 5, 6, 7, you know what I'm saying? Family planning in earnest. We don't spend any money on that.
Well, it's a major subject in the curriculum.
In the curriculum, I'm talking about
family life. Well,
nationally, prior to someone having children, not the children who are the result of children. That's obviously important as well. But put prior to that, so that you're not constantly feeding the system with the kind of volume that we're seeing.
We look at our educational output, our educational system, and we obviously would like to wave a magic wand and it be fixed. But look at any society, and you will see that these are decades of processes. Decades. In Singapore, it's in 4 or 5 decades of work. Finland didn't wake up one morning and become the #1 education system in the world. They worked on it for decades, trial and error. Same thing with South Korea, same thing with a great number of other countries. And it's for us too. Give you an example. I visited Germany last year at the invitation of the German government, and they wanted to show off their dual education system. What is this? Okay. Sometime in the 1970s, Germany realized that their country was aging, and they were going to begin sometime later to lose their technical competitive edge. All right? Germany is known for its engineering. So they wanted to begin to develop a cohort of qualified technicians, not engineers. Some will obviously go on to do engineering. Technicians, so that those Germans, when they get to be whatever, their time and age, there would be a replacement, a group of replacement. They started something called dual education. In other words, beginning in high school around the 11th grade, 12th grade, they introduced this concept of students going to school for some days and going into the work world for some other days. It took Germany 40 years to perfect that system. 40 years. We would like to do it in 2 and 3. It's not possible. You're talking about the human being, all right? We are doing it by starting at the very beginning of human life. Yes, Family life now is a part of our curriculum. Family life introduces the concept of who is the human, how is that human learning, how is that human to be taken care of morally, ethically, spiritually, culturally, socially, and so on and so forth. So that in a generation or two, after you have had your 80 or 90,000 students per year or whatever go through a system of that nature, you will have a society enculturated with a new sense of family. It isn't going to happen overnight. So yes, family planning, which is a small composite of the family life curriculum, everything, even for instance, this thing on nutrition and diet and how children are to be fed and what is good for children in terms of brain and emotional and physical development. There was a time when, in our day, for instance, you fed them whatever, lactogen and all that stuff. That has all changed now because we understand how important it is for nutrition in the earlier stages of life, which is an integral part of family life education. So,
do you when you first came here right after the 2017 election, I know that it's amazing how, I can't even describe it, but obviously you've gotten to know a lot more about this stuff. But you get the feeling to some extent, Sasha, that our country has been run over the last several decades. And I don't want to diminish it, but in an ad hoc way, right? Mm-hmm. One group come in, they do this. Another group come in, they do this. Mm-hmm. The kind of strategic planning you're talking about that seems to be being put in place, is that something that is sustainable? Is the infrastructure that is going to administer that aware of the long-term benefit of that and will stick with that process, or will just be another flavor come along next year, and so we end up with this ad hoc type stuff? Are you confident that we've got our finger on the button?
I hope so, and I'll tell you why I hope so. Now we are putting it, enshrining it in policy documents, all right? Now we are buying or inviting as much buy-in from as many stakeholders. When I first came to office, one of the first things that I did is have a stakeholder conclave. What is it that we want out of education? Building on what has gone before. I give great credit to the former ministers of education, Honorable Jerome Fitzgerald and the Honorable Dame Ivy and Carl Bethel and so on, who came up with the Shared Vision for Education 2030, who came up with the 10-year education plan back in the day in the first administration of Mr. Ingram, who put together the education thing with Keva Bethel and Vince Ferguson and so forth. Building on that, okay, but also being humble enough to understand that this thing is changing so dynamically. I mean, what was understood 35 years ago, 20 years ago, Ed, is now, I wouldn't say completely different, but certainly is different, all right? And you got to be flexible enough, though you may have a certain underpinning theory or principles and so on. You got to be flexible enough to be making your changes and adjustments as you need to be. But the fundamental thing is this. Everybody must come to the acceptance and realization that education is priority number one. Right. Full stop.
And the countries that have done that, we see where they are.
Yeah, you see where they are. All right? Education. And I'm not talking about one size fits all. We're talking about a broad, comprehensive, dynamic, flexible, malleable system that reaches and embraces and accommodates everybody.
And
what do I mean by everybody?
Yeah.
And no discount to the value of any education. For instance, you ain't academic, so go learn a trade. No, sir. Not today. Today, every student, according to his or her interests and orientation and appetite, should have the same opportunity as any other student to maximize that potential, whatever that happens to be, without any prejudice or bias being exhibited toward them.
We used to do, if you're in GC, you got kind of like ban it, which is ironic because you see we now end up with a country that lacks in terms of skilled crafts. Mm-hmm. In fact, I say this story often. One of my best friends, who was not academically inclined, we used to have woodwork at QC, and he was a woodwork maniac.
Genius, eh?
And as a result, he was the first person to have a business in that thing.
Exactly.
I want to maybe just kind of re-examine one thing, because I'm very concerned about our analytical ability, etc., as opposed to what we just believe could work. Is that what is in place now, or what you're seeking to put in place now, is a thread, is a foundation or a pole, but it always requires tweaking, addition, but you don't break down the pole.
No.
And we're going to take a break. We'll come back. We'll talk about that.
No.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Ed Fields here, along with Jeff Lloyd and Sasha Lightbourne as our guest host. Jeff Lloyd is the Minister of Education and Technology. That's what it is.
Minister of Education.
Okay, I know they had something in there.
Science,
technology. Yeah. We talked about the parents. We talked about the system. And a very important component of that system is the teacher.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm going to give you just a little 2-minute thing here that I know that a lot of people will probably want to give me flack for, but I'm going to say it anyway. I track, the Bahamas, and you can remember this, Sasha was not around, when the Bahamas would tout itself as an investment opportunity because of a number of things. They used to say things like high literacy rate. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Proximity to the United States.
Yes.
Good telecommunications. Speaks English. These are the basic, things.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if we can talk about this high literacy rate now, but the question I want to ask you is, when we changed over to becoming a majority rule independent country in 1973, at the time, the public school system was pumping out pretty good students. We had a lot of expat teachers. And we decided about this Bahamianization policy, where basically, it seemed to me, and you can track it, that we said, you know what, we're getting rid of expats in the public system, except for very highly specialized things where we can't find local teachers like physics and chemistry, etc. And we're going to just put Bahamian teachers in there who have, some minimal training, etc., etc. That, to me, is a big part of the problem. Whether we want to talk, truth is uncomfortable. Now, going back to this thing about Finland's and then South Korea's and all these where the teachers are revered and they are compensated based on the level of that reverence. Can we not, Jeff Lloyd, start to incentivize teachers in a way that wherever they feel they may be on the hamster wheel, that now this is an opportunity to maximize their benefit by putting all, and I'm not saying that there aren't a lot who don't. I mean, that's to qualify all these things, but giving their all to make sure that you have a benchmark, and that benchmark says 85% have to have X, blah 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 blah, whatever the thing is. Is that not possible to do?
Of course, and that's why Mrs. Janice Knowles has been now working on the revival of the career path module in the Ministry of Education, which has been in abeyance for some time. Teachers today, Ed, who wish to remain in the classroom, because, the way we, quote-unquote, compensate people is to promote them. You're a fantastic teacher, so let's promote you to senior mistress, and then, and so on. Mm-hmm. Teachers who really want to remain in the classroom can move to master teacher, senior master teacher today, which of course carries with it certain financial implications. But, you're absolutely right. Yes, we can incentivize. Yes, we should incentivize so that people have some aspirational verve, to which they can reach and strive. No question about it, because there are many teachers who love their teaching, who want to remain teachers, and who would gladly embrace the role of mentor teacher, who will take a teacher or two under his or her wings and coach and mentor them and show them, as it were, quote unquote, the ropes. You got 100 teachers coming out of the University of the Bahamas every year. You're basically throwing them to, as it were, the wolves. They could now come under a kind of coaching paradigm where they are being mentored and trained, as it were, quote unquote, by a master teacher, senior master teacher, who has mastered her craft, who has demonstrated leadership, who has shown and proven commitment, and which you are talking about always, outcomes, results. Who's proven results? And who has compensated for that? Yes, indeed. I am all for that. And I hope to God soon we can get to that.
I'd like to see just, you talk about concepts and innovative, right? Where you put aside, pick a number, $10 million. I'm just picking a number, $10 million. And you say that these are the benchmarks. Any teacher who feels that, who can achieve these benchmarks, they get X. I think you'll have a madhouse race. I mean, obviously you have to have different levels because you can't say to someone, if the thing is 85% and they got 84%, you get nothing. You know what I mean? There's got to be some kind of prorations, right?
Can we afford that, though?
I think we cannot not afford it. That's the thing. What is it that we cannot afford? There's got to be something we can give up. Jeff Lloyd said that education is got to be seen by everyone as the number one priority. Right. We cannot go anywhere without it, Sasha. Can't.
I agree.
So what is it that we can get, even if that we have to get rid of? We have to say, okay, we can't, we ain't doing this to do this. Maybe we have to, I don't want to live with potholes. Maybe the road don't get patched out yet. Whatever. It cannot be, I look at how roads are patched. To me, the way that roads are patched as a result of poor education because they're patched poorly. Someone could get a truck. You can buy a truck now. One guy, drive around. You see it on the internet, right? And patch a road. You don't need 5 guys standing around a hole taking 3 days to patch the hole. Okay? So I just don't think we can. I think we have to draw a line in the sand. And I don't know if this minister is going to be pushing that where we say these are programs that we have to stop the bleeding. If you have a cut,
but you have some bleeding within these institutions, meaning you have some teachers that don't want to change their ways. Innovation is a big part of the advancement of the entire world. Gone are the days when I had to put a brown paper bag to cover my textbook so that my textbook would be decent for the entire year. And a kid can now take a tablet to school. But there are some teachers that are also blocking this innovation because they're not comfortable with it.
But then they need to be disincentivized.
But this is how those kids are now learning. I have a 3-year-old godchild who knows how to use a tablet. A tablet was just introduced to me at what age?
Yeah, but you've introduced 12, tablets 13? Into the schools now, right?
Yeah.
You can't have a teacher who say, well, I can teach on that. Well, then,
No, but Sasha is right, though. I mean,
but what do you do with that, though?
Innovation is a key to education being priority number one.
But what do you do? What do you do with people in the system who don't wish to go?
When you try to take them out, that's when the unions come in.
Well,
It's so many different external factors to education in our country that take us 2 steps forward and then 10 steps backward.
Listen.
And I'm not blaming the union. I am all for unions.
Let me tell
you
something.
Don't get me wrong.
I know what you're saying, and that is this. There is Jeff Lloyd and I have had this conversation many times. There's institutionalization that creates barriers. We know that. The question is, Sasha, not to recognize that they exist, but how do you break them down? I mean, there's one side where you're going to incentivize teachers to be good, but you've got to deal with those who, and I'm not just saying teachers, whether administrators, whether whomever. Well, you can't be, how do you now, Jeff Lloyd, to Sasha's point, break those barriers down?
Some societies, and certainly we are beginning discussion with the unions on this subject and all stakeholders. Today, teachers are part of the public service. That in itself is a challenge. Okay, good. All right. But if we look, say, for instance, to the Jamaican model and other places, but not to Jamaican model, teachers are part of a teaching commission, right, which stipulates certain requirements in order to maintain your standing and status as a teacher, similar to any number of professions. You have to be every 3 years. Exactly. All right. That's one way, okay, for us to move away and put teachers under the way the hospitals have it, Public Health Hospitals Authority, put teachers under authority or commission or council, so on and so forth, which has with it a certain, paradigm of accountability, if you want to use that term. And I think the unions are amenable to. Yeah, I think so because it helps everybody.
Well, see,
everybody benefits from an environment of accountability. Now, of course,
not everyone does. That's the problem, right? And the question is, what's the critical mass?
Well, I think everybody benefits from an environment of accountability. I mean, obviously, otherwise there's chaos naturally. All right. Naturally, also, you expect that there would be some resistance. You meet the resistance, Ed. How do you deal with it? You meet it. You meet the resistance. You coach, you encourage, you beg, whatever you got to do. But, I mean, someday, this train is moving forward, and everybody got to get on board or you're going to get left. And I've said this many times. The world is moving. Because you small, the world ain't having no sympathy for you, Bahamas. The world is moving.
We have this capacity
I'll give you an example, Ed.
To say why we have to be like the rest of the world.
Well, hey, that's where it is. Bahama, cashless. Just the other day, I think it's Bahamas Air saying something about their North American kiosk or something is going to become cashless. Listen, Ford Motor Company has said within 5 years, all of their cars are going to be electric cars. Electric cars. Hey, the world is not going to wait for you to catch up, and the world isn't going to feel sorry for you. It is as simple as that. We here in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas are going to go to a cashless custom system. The Minister of Finance have said it. You ain't going to be able to write no checks. It isn't going to happen tomorrow, but we are on the way to a cash.
But those transitions, Jeff Lloyd, are much easier because it's been a gradual scenario toward that. When you now, because what you're talking about now is this. What you're talking about is courageous leadership. Because if the factor of win and loss is in that whole paradigm, then you got a problem. Because, we can be honest, we've always been candid with each other. Sure. You got a situation where, and we know it, we all know the timing. There's 2.5 years or 3 years left before the election. Well, maybe that should have been done in year 1, but, year 4, that ain't going to get done. Okay, because that's a lot of furor, okay, in the marketplace. And the people who are involved in the furor only care about them. The question then becomes, and, you speak to it, about the political directorate, right? That a truly visionary directorate says from day one, these are the things we're going to do. And whether I win or lose, too bad. The country will benefit. It is. I think I heard Mr. Minister said one time when we were dealing with one issue. I think it was about the increase in VAT. Okay, trying to run a country, not win an election. Precisely. Are we? How strongly is the FNM, the Minister of Education, committed to that type of mentality?
Well, listen, I've said in the House of Assembly at least twice. Don't try to intimidate me or threaten me talking about me. I ain't voting for you the next time. I'm not here seeking re-election. I'm here because the people of this country I got involved, and you and I had this conversation. I got involved because I knew that our country needed to go in a different direction. I got involved because I have been invited to, and I believe that there's something that I can offer to the table that will make that possible, all right? Mm-hmm. Along with many other like-minded souls. Mm-hmm. So, and that's why we have taken the stance we have taken. We are digitizing the system of education. Come hell or high water, no matter the resistance, we are going to the early childhood development processes, which we are now doing. We are going to be requiring teachers to develop professionally so that they can maintain the standard of quality that they need to maintain for themselves and for the students that they are. We're doing it. We are going to do it.
Are you going to looking at a commission type scenario?
Yeah, absolutely. As a matter of fact, it was the union in the previous industrial agreement that proffered an idea such as this. And we are going to be looking at it and putting our thoughts together and making sure that this happens because it's necessary. It is absolutely necessary. If education is going to be priority number one, this isn't going to be priority number one for Jeffrey Lloyd, Minister of Education, or the Ministry of Education establishment, or a group of teachers, or a group of... No. Everybody. This is a national priority. Education training, and the continuous retraining, lifelong learning is a national priority, and it has to be. Without it, Ed, we 500, 700, 900,000 people in the Bahamas could forget it You hear what I'm saying? India, within the next 5 years, is going to be the most populous country on earth. All right? You got 9 or 10 countries that are occupying all of the earth in terms of population. You think anybody's going to sit down there and moan and groan and feel sorry for the Commonwealth of the Bahamas? We better get on board or we getting left. And we could do it because we have promised that we've shown that we could do it.
When you first came in here, you were one of my first guests post May 10th, 2017. I can tell you that the Jeff Lloyd that came in here was extremely... I wouldn't use the word perplexed. I don't think that Jeff Lloyd is perplexed, but certainly had a completely dark view of the status of where things were. Do you now see a glimmer?
Absolutely. I mean, it was a culture shock. I came into the public sector. I mean, I wasn't used to the public sector. Things take too long rather. They're too slow. You know, they don't seem to have a sense of urgency. These are people's lives, and so on. But yes, yeah, man, definitely. Ed, I've lived in any number of countries. I've traveled to many countries. I've dealt with any number of peoples. We are as equipped, we are as talented, we are as intelligent, hungry as any country on it. It's about leadership, and it's about the willingness of our people to get it done. Shawnee Miller is an example. We got more Rhodes Scholars per capita than any country on earth. This little Commonwealth of the Bahamas. We're just coming out of independence now. What is 44 years, 45 years? Come on, man. Come on. This is nothing that we cannot do if we put our minds to it. And I say we put our minds to making education training priority number one, from the cradle to the grave. And of course, we now, because of legislation, we can't go past age 5. We're going to change it so you could go to age 3, where universally every 3-year-old will be in a formal Ministry of Education registered preschool, pre-primary education program. We have to. So
you feel like, I'm trying to figure out an analogy, but you think the bleeding has stopped? You think that the
patient is stabilized?
The free fall. Okay, all right.
No question. The patient is stabilized. You had a serious accident, very, very serious accident. Your parents were called, your girlfriend, your wife, whatever, your children. Listen, you're now going into surgery. You got 3 or 4 doctors around you. It's a touch and go. You're out of the surgery. The surgery went well, but the next 24 hours is the most critical because anything can happen and you could go south. No problem. So you made it, all right, over those 24 hours. You're looking better, but you still are not out of the woods. You managed to get past day 2, day 3. All right, they take you off the breathing machine and you're now breathing on your own. Your wife comes and holds your hand and say, honey, and you can squeeze her hands. You are far from having recovered, but you're on the way. Your situation condition is stabilized. That's where we are, Ed. And we are making progress. We are getting there, but it's a long way to go yet, and we are not out of the woods. Even though the IDB says we have turned the corner, the IDB didn't say we are out of the woods. The IDB didn't say
it turned the corner.
It turned the corner.
You got far way to go down the next road.
Man.
But let me ask you, when you also, I know that in the beginning of this whole thing, there was a lot of, I wouldn't know that turmoil might be the word, but certainly issues. I've not heard a lot recently. Has your team, not only has your team stabilized, and do you feel that you have a larger percentage buy-in to the vision than you would have imagined at this time?
From what people tell me, yes. Okay? If you listen to the noise in the market, no. But I understand that the noise in the market is always going to be louder than, the general voice and so on. Because those, the majority of the Bahamian people understand that this ain't no overnight fix. You came out of a very dark place, a very dangerous place, and it's going to take some time. Now, they ain't got no time to be watching you sit down and twiddle your thumbs and say, hey, we've been in a bad, you better get moving and get things done and show progress. Definitely, that's the attitude that's out there as well. But yeah, I think so. And naturally, I believe that there are those who are going to be making noise because they're not satisfied. Kisasa said so. Innovation. You got to make it happen. And people out there resisting it. Like you said, institutionalization. There are folks who are very comfortable with the status quo. Let me tell you that. They are happy. They ain't interested in no change. You hear what I'm saying? Man,
they're benefiting from it.
Of course, keep things the way they are. Let me be able to run to my MP. Back in 1974, 75, or something like that, Arthur Dion Hanna said in a public presentation, we are not here about giving you a fish, but teaching you how to fish. 45 years ago.
People still can't fish.
Well, we haven't taught them, I guess.
Yeah. Well, Jeff Lloyd, it's always a pleasure having you, and I appreciate you coming, especially at such short notice. But we thought this is most applicable at this time of the year. Sasha, thank you.
Sir.
Thank you.
No problem.
Always
Ed.
a pleasure.
I go on to say uncle, but I say
Yeah. Hold on, uncle. Jeff, and Minister, I think we all want to have hope. That's what's important. And the analogy I use all the time is, if you have your family living in a shack, and they say, Daddy, we got to get out of this shack. But Daddy ain't got no money. But Daddy managed to get a piece of land from the government or whatever. But Daddy ain't got no money to build no house. So Daddy, for 1 year, he go into the bush and he knocked the bush down. You get all kind of poison wood and prickle and thing. But I don't care about. I don't care about clear the bush. I'm still in the shack. I'm still in the shack. So Daddy, he cleared the land, and the next year maybe he scrap a couple of dollars. He built a foundation. But I can't live in a foundation. I'm still in the shack. And until you get them out of the shack and into a home, and then, the way human nature is, once you get in the home, well, listen, Daddy, we're the cable. We're the cable, we get it, but it's hot in here, man. So the job that you have is a rewarding in that you see what you're accomplishing. But you can't expect to be rewarded or to get accolades, because people will never be content until everything is perfect.
I remember the Tampa Bay Buccaneers under the late, great John McKay. John McKay.
USC.
Yeah. And John came in and he had Doug Williams as a quarterback. Mm-hmm. All right. And they were getting mercilessly.
Yeah, they had defeated season.
They got washed right up in a number of times. Mm-hmm. But every game, there was progress. Every game. I think it was in year 3 that they broke through. Every game, there was progress. Now, look at the Chicago Cubs. How long they've been suffering.
Yeah.
All right? But every game, there's progress. All right? Yes, you won't get out of that shock. But the children and the wife could see that the land is now cleared. The foundation has now been put down. I see the walls going up. Ah, boy, I can't wait for us to get out of this doggone shack, man. Rats just be running over us in the nighttime. But you know something? We making progress. I mean, a husband, I wonder if you don't want to go to the bank and borrow the money. But your husband say, you know something? Wait till we get to Bell course. Then we might be able to go borrow some. But you're making progress. For some, it ain't fast enough. I get that. Okay? For others, I understand. I won't get out the shack now. Please, let me be clear. But to be making progress. Yeah. And after a while, you're going to look back and you say, you know something? We did it. We did it. We got a house, like Ed say. Now maybe we could think about carpet in the bedroom. Putting cable,
Alive.
And then after a while, producer, you know something? I think we can afford one pool in the back.
Yeah, or a little ductless air conditioner. All right. Listen, it's always a pleasure, man. Maybe the key is how much you're showing the progress. Maybe that's the issue. Maybe, and that's why we have people like you come on, so that you can at least demonstrate that there's things going on.
Thank you very much.
Ken, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Sasha, thank you very much.